Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for the fourth of 5 Research Compass Series events. My name is Tiffany Willoughby, Research Education Programs and Outreach Manager in the Office of Research. Joining me today is Amanda Boone. Amanda Boone serves as the Director of the Institutional Review Board, IRB, Office at UTD. She has worked for the Office of Research for over 17 years and has primarily focused on human subject protection since 2015. Amanda previously held positions in the Office of Sponsored Projects, experiencing the adventures of grant submission and contract negotiation. She holds a Master's of Fine Arts degree in Creative Writing from Bowling Green State University and a BA in English from Kansas State University. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you, Tiffany, for that fantastic introduction. What we're here to talk about is human subjects research, and really kind of what I hope to talk with you guys about. As we know, the rules don't change from institution to institution unless you have like federal regulations that change. That just happened a couple of years ago. But the rules don't change. They are kind of universal, but we do have different ways of interpreting from one institution to the other. So not every IRB committee is going to be the same, and not every IRB administrative office is going to be the same. We might have different procedures and all of that stuff. So really, my hope today is to kind of just give you some basic information where you know at least who to contact, who to reach out to if you have questions, and kind of help you understand a little bit better about how to navigate the IRB process here at UT Dallas. So as Tiffany said, I'm Amanda Boone, the Director of the Institutional Review Board Office. Our office is not the IRB committee itself. We are the administrative unit. And so we have 2 specialists in addition to me who work in this office, Mary Beth Goodnight and Yesenia Mendez, who are fantastic. If you get the opportunity to work with them, I think you'll be really, really pleased. What do I do? I am the director of the office. If you have questions or anything about the IRB process or you know, policies or procedures, that would be me. I go out and I do these types of things. I talk with investigators and faculty and students about the IRB process, who we are, try to do those outreach opportunities and all of that. And why is it important? I hope it is important. Human subjects research is important. So if you are doing that, it's just good to know who you can contact, who you can reach out. And of course, I am one of those people. So today on the agenda, just to kind of give you a kind of a overview, of course, we'll talk about the IRB committee. We'll talk about the IRB office as well, the administrative unit, the process that we have here at UT Dallas. We'll also talk about the common pitfalls, and I don't want to take a whole lot of time to talk about the pitfalls. I think investigators kind of know what they are, but just from an administrator perspective, when I go out and I do those post-monitoring visits, some kind of the issues that I see are kind of universal, it seems. So I want to just briefly touch on those, and then of course we are in a pandemic. So how does that work here at UT Dallas when you're doing those in-person human subjects procedures? And let me just say that this presentation is for you. So if you have questions, please type them into, I think you can type them into the chat. Tiffany is going to help me kind of keep tabs on those. And so if you have questions, please put them in there, because I want to answer any questions that you have. So first and foremost, the Institutional Review Board at UT Dallas, we do review the committee, and I say we, but the committee reviews all of the Dallas affiliated research activities involving human subjects. So, of course, that's going to be personnel. So if you are a faculty, a staff, a student investigator, doing a research project, regardless of the risk, those will need to come through the IRB process here at UT Dallas. We do allow staff and students to be principal investigators of studies. However, we do ask that a tenure track faculty member serve as their faculty sponsor for that. So we do ask for that. You know, a few years ago when I first took over, I would have said that UT Dallas is primarily social and behavioral research, and that's really all that we do. Traditionally, yes, that was true. We are moving into having more investigators who are kind of diving into the clinical trials. We do have some studies that are more and more, they involve devices, medical devices, those types of things. And so we are kind of, you know, diving into more of the FDA regulated stuff. So to say UT Dallas is primarily social and behavioral, that still is the vast majority of what we do, but we are kind of diversifying, and that's been really exciting to see this in the last 5 years. Just within the last year, we had the MRI Center open up down at the Center for Brain Health, which has been pretty exciting. And then we have, you know, just the Medical Device Center here at UT Dallas and other pockets of faculty who are doing other really cool stuff as well. So we do have both social and behavior as well as some of those kind of clinical things going on here. I did want to mention that we only have one IRB committee. Some institutions have more. I know UC Southwestern has 4 IRBs. They are a much bigger research institution than UT Dallas, but we only have one here, and we do kind of look at all of these diverse activities that are going on by our UT Dallas investigators. So we do have kind of a larger committee just so that we can kind of see the things that are going on. So I talked about the personnel when we're talking about what the IRB will actually look at, all affiliated. And that includes those collaborative studies. So I kind of mentioned UT Southwestern. We do have some faculty who, you know, might have a dual appointment or might have have a collaborator at different institutions such as UT Southwestern or, you know, a different institution. If that other institution is their IRB is going to review, and there's going to be a single IRB review, perfectly okay. We can agree to, you know, kind of relinquish our right as the IRB to review a study. However, we still do need to have record of that. So we do have a application process, and we do still want to kind of have record of these studies, even if we're not the IRB of record. And a lot of times the other institution, the IRB that is reviewing the study, will rely on us to kind of do some of the checks. So like conflict of interest and making sure that human subjects protection training and good clinical practice if needed, if those trainings are in place. So there is still a role that we do administratively, even if our IRB is not reviewing. So we do ask that those studies do come through our office as well. The IRB, regardless of funding status, we will apply the rules, the regulations to everything. So if you have that federal funding, it's fantastic. If you don't, we're still going to review your protocols in light of the IRB regulations that kind of apply those rules as well. Something else that we kind of look at is use of our resources. So let's say that a institution outside wants to come into our campus. Maybe they want to utilize some space on our campus to do human subjects research. That's really not that common. It might, if the MRI Center opens up, that might be a little bit more common. Right now, it's just UT Dallas, but if it ever did open up to outside, and people wanted to come in and use that center for human subjects research, we would ask them to come through us. But another resource that we have that we are really, really protective of is our students. So if an outside institution or entity wants to come in and recruit our students, or and use our resources to do that, then we're going to ask that they come through our office. We want to just make sure what the message is. If you're using us to recruit those students, we want to see that study and review that study as well. So the IRB office, we are the interface between the institutional review board and the investigators. Like I mentioned earlier, we have Yesenia Mendez and Mary Beth Goodnight, specialists in the office, and they have been doing this for a while. I think they have 5 or 6 years combined experience between them. And so they have experience with the reviewers and the regulations. They know what the reviewers are going to be looking for. They know which reviewers are actually looking at it and kind of their quirks and their hangups. For instance, if we have one IRB reviewer that jargon is just their button. So if they see jargon in a study, it's just they're not going to be able to see anything else. So we know our reviewers, we know the regulations, and we work with investigators to help get those studies through the review process as quickly as possible. Keep in mind when the IRB specialists are doing that pre-review of those studies, because that's the first thing they'll do. They'll take a pre-review at it and they'll look at it and they'll send some feedback, perhaps, about a study. And keep in mind that feedback is not from the IRB committee itself. It is from the administration. So if you feel really, really strongly about something, it's okay to say, well, can you send this on through to the IRB? And yeah, absolutely we can. But just know that feedback is based on their knowledge of the regulations and their knowledge of the IRB reviewers. A lot of the time when we're doing this pre-review, if you have IRB feedback, if IRB feedback does come in after the IRB has reviewed the study, and you're not really sure what the IRB reviewer was getting at, the IRB specialist can help with that as well, to help say, well, this is what I believe that they're looking for. A lot of times the specialists do actually have communication with the reviewers, and so they do kind of know. So if what's in the written form doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, a quick call to that specialist will really help that out and air that out. A lot of times it comes down to just the individual language within an application. Sometimes it's easy to, I've had a lot of conversations, not a lot, but I've had conversations with faculty, and it's really clear what they want to do, and they have thought of everything. They have their I's dotted and their T's crossed, and it's a really great plan. When that application comes in their written form, some of the things just kind of get lost in that translation from how you visualize it to how you're representing it on the paper. So those are the types of things we can help with as well. If we have that conversation and we understand what it is that you want to do, maybe we can help you with, well, this is maybe how you want to write it so that it's clear and that it clearly comes through. Because just like a grant application where you have to kind of sell it to those funding agencies, this is kind of the same. You're not really selling it, you're just giving a clear picture, but you have to do it really clearly in a written form. And for some people, that's harder to do than for others. And so we can definitely help with, especially if you have questions about the consent process or the recruitment, that type of thing, we can help you with that. The science, we can't help you with that, but with the stuff related to recruitment and consent and you know, how this is what I want to do. How do I, you know, say this? Or if you want to run something by, is it okay if I use this, this, or this? And we can say, well, you know, maybe if you want to go a different route, maybe that would be okay too. We're not here to say no. What we are here to do is help you do what you need to do and accomplish what you need to do in a way that's best protects human participants. And so that's what we try to do is maybe if you need a certain piece of data, is there something else that you could collect that might get you the end result without increasing the risk? Or if you store it in this type of, if you store it in this manner versus the other manner, maybe confidentiality and privacy, that type of thing. Another thing that we do is we provide educational opportunities. I kind of touched on this in my intro. We go out, we do try to do at least one session a month on various topics and have that available to investigators. But we also are happy to come out to labs, to classrooms, and give presentations and talks there. I have gone to lab meetings. I have had investigators who said, you know, I think my lab really kind of needs to brush up on documentation or the consent process or something. So if you see that there's a need within your lab, within your classroom, we're happy to come out and do those opportunities like that. And then of course the post-monitoring, which a lot of places kind of treat this as an audit. We really don't see it as an audit. I really look at it as just a opportunity for me, and yeah, I come out to the lab or to a Teams meeting with the investigator, and we talk about the process and how things are running, and I do look at the files and all of that stuff, but it's more of a conversation. What are you doing? What's working really well? Maybe I want to steal that and share that with somebody else. If they're doing a similar thing, I can say, well, you know, and I saw in a lab earlier, and this is what they're doing, and it works really well. And also, if there are things that maybe do need to be, can be improved, maybe I can offer some advice on that as well. But it really is just a conversation, me coming out and just talking about your study. That's kind of how we look at it. It does help prepare an individual for an outside audit if like NSF or NIH wants to come and review your study records. Hopefully that will get you ready for that. I have had investigators who UT Dallas is not the IRB of record, who said, hey, UT Southwestern is coming and they're going to audit my files. Would you mind coming and taking a look? And we went out and we did that, and we talked with the investigator to help them feel a little bit more prepared for UT Southwestern IRB staff to come in and take a look. So we're happy to do all of those things. For the post-monitoring, we do primarily, those are picked randomly at random. However, we do look at those studies that are federally funded, the ones that have maybe those vulnerable population or looking at sensitive topics, kind of are within the list of the ones that we kind of do the random sampling from. So nobody is really specifically targeted. It's just kind of one of those happy things that happens. What we'll do is we'll send you an email in the mail and that says, hey, we're going to come out. Let's schedule a time. And then, you know, if you have questions, feel free to reach out and contact me. I've definitely done that with several investigators where they say, okay, what do you want to look at? What should I do? Don't do anything special. I just want to come out and see your process as it is and how it's working for you. So I want to talk a little bit about the process itself. We do at UT Dallas use Cayuse, which is fairly new, and I'm really excited about Cayuse. I think we rolled it out in mid-August, so it is a fairly new item for us. So we do submit those protocols through Cayuse. Once they are submitted, they're routed to the IRB specialist who then does that pre-review. We are able to actually make comments within the Cayuse form, and we can send it back to investigators with those comments in there to kind of, hey, maybe you wanted to, this wasn't clear. Can you provide additional information here? Or can you attach the recruitment script here, kind of thing. So we can kind of talk back and forth through Cayuse. Please don't think that the Cayuse is and that messaging back and forth prevents you from calling and reaching out to our office, because we still want to have that connection with our investigators and have that interaction and that dialogue. So if there's something that, hey, I'm not really sure what you meant here, it's cool to pick up the phone and ask. So the first thing that they'll do, the specialists will do a pre-review. They will just look at it and offer suggestions for, what they might ask for suggestions before they send it on to the IRB committee itself. Once that pre-review is kind of gone underway, then they'll forward it on to the IRB for actual review. The specialist is the one who makes the risk assessment. And so they'll say, they'll decide what type of review that it will go out to. So if they look at it and they say, hey, this is exempt from the regulations, they'll send it on for administrative review. And that goes to me. And I'm the one that kind of reviews that and approves it, or says, hey, I think it actually is a little bit riskier. Let's send this on to the actual IRB. If the specialist will say, hey, no, this does fit under the regulations, it's not exempt, it needs to go to an expedited, they will push it on. Expedited review through our IRB committee itself is 3 IRB reviewers. And that's always going to be the IRB chair. Andrea Werner-Sis is our IRB chair from BBS this year. So she's always going to look at the applications, and then 2 other reviewers are going to look at those as well. And the specialist is the one who kind of looks at the studies and says, okay, I think this reviewer would be the best to look at this for what various reasons. So that will go to 3 different reviewers to review. It'll be under review. We like to get the feedback back to our investigators. If it goes to the expedited, we give the reviewers about a week, and then we want to respond back to the investigators. So we try to say from submission to the approval process, or to that feedback from the IRB, it's going to be a couple weeks when you're going through the expedited review process. If you're going through the exempt process, it should be the same week that you submitted, or within a week of when you've submitted that. That's what we really strive to do. And of course, sometimes those modifications, if they're really simple modifications, we can push them back even quicker to you for that. So there are some modifications that would just do an administrative review, even if it's an expedited study. So if you're just adding study personnel, or if you are updating verbiage in a consent form so that it's clear, you're not really, there's no risk involved, you're not changing that risk category at all, we can do an administrative review of that, and that should go a lot quicker than being actually reviewed by an IRB reviewer. The approval will come through, and you'll have a letter that comes through the Cayuse system. And we also will stamp a consent form through Cayuse, and so that will be available as well. And if for any reason it's not really clear where to go to find that stamped form, or if that stamped form, you don't see it, it could be that we missed it. Like I said, we're just diving into Cayuse, so sometimes we might miss something. So feel free to reach out and let us know, and we will definitely make sure that you can find that and it is available to you. One thing that I did want to mention, if you are new to to Cayuse user. You go in and you log in. It's a single login. It's just like our UT Dallas, anything that you want to log into, like e-learning or anything like that. So it's your net ID and your password. You log in. You're not able to access the system. We might need to add you if you have never been in it before. If you're new to the institution, just contact us. Just reach out to us, and we can add you to the system. Same with any students that you have, or postdocs or anything like that. If we need to add somebody, we certainly can do that. And then it usually takes about 12 hours before that person can access the system, because it goes all the way to Cayuse. It's not something that we do in-house. Another thing I wanted to mention about Cayuse is the human subjects protection training that we do require for all of our studies. We have 2 different modes that you can take that will qualify. We have e-learning, which you can do your human subjects protection, and that is available to every single person on campus. So every single person that logs into e-learning should be able to see human subjects protection training, and you can take that. It'll take you to a, once you're done with the education module, it will take you to a kind of like a test, I guess, a quiz. And once you finish that quiz, I think you have to hit a certain number that you get right before you can actually pass that quiz. You get a certificate of completion, and then you just do a screenshot, save that as a PDF, and send that, upload that into Cayuse when you do your submission. When the other thing that we also accept is city. A lot of people have taken that city training. We do recognize that and accept that. Cool thing about Cayuse is that it integrates with city. So if you have taken that city training, it should automatically pull up when you add yourself to a study. Caveat to that is that the email address in city needs to be the same as the email address in Cayuse. So for instance, I have 2 different email addresses. It's the same account. It's just one is my net ID at utdallas.edu, and the other is amanda.boone at utdallas.edu. You bet that I use the amanda.boone a lot, just because it's a lot easier than AMN030100. So I went in and I tested it, and yeah, I had to go into my city and update my email address to netid at utdallas.edu so that it would match Cayuse. So if you do want it to integrate into city and you don't want to keep uploading your training certificate every single time that you submit a new application, I would suggest to go in and just change your email address so that it is netid at utdallas.edu. When we're talking about training, we do request that you update your training every 4 years. So every 4 years, if you take that training, it's good for another 4 years. We might reach out to you and say, we need you to redo your training because it's been 4 years now. Just want to briefly touch on the common pitfalls that I see when I go out and I do post monitoring. It actually did surprise me at first that a lot of the things people were getting kind of caught up on are really the same through each laboratory. The very first thing that I noticed was just documentation. It's really important to have a complete like a binder or something, a complete record of a study, so that everybody in the everybody in the lab, all those study personnel, they know what the IRB has approved. They know the history of it, and they know what study recruitment is needed, what consent form is most up to date, what measures they should be using, all of that stuff. That's one of the things that I see, is that documentation just isn't there, or it's not available to everybody. So that is really important. Kind of what's tied into that is that organization. Sometimes I'll go out and some people, they might not know where things are stored, or they know where things are stored, but it's not well organized. And so it's not that useful to study personnel to have it. It's there, but it's just kind of there, and it's not really useful. So those are kinds of the things. And also with documentation, it's not just the files and the paper and how things are stored and managed. Sometimes it's documentation of consent. That is one that has been a really big one, especially when we were doing in person and you're getting those in-person signatures. I go out and I see that while the participant has signed every single one, they might not have dated it, or they've signed it and dated it, but the investigator has not signed it and dated it. Or the dates are different, or things are written on the consent form, like the participant's email address or the study ID. All of these things are things that I see every when I go out to do these post monitorings. So it's just really important to have that documentation, to have that organization available. And if something goes wrong, it might go wrong. It happens to everybody. That's just another thing to document. We had this person come in. They dated the form wrong, and they left before we caught it, and you're just documenting that. So that's why the dates don't match between the investigator and the participant, kind of thing. Another thing is the communication. And it's one of the things that I did notice is that when things do happen, a lot of times it is like a grad student or an undergraduate student who knows the rules but might not be following them as religiously as they could. I have a few stories that I could tell. One of them is I went out to an investigator who I have a whole lot of respect for. This person is very diligent, they're very conscientious, and I believe that their lab is that way as well. I went out to do a post monitoring, and they called me the day before and said, we were getting ready for you, and I noticed that I have about 35 consent forms and I can't find them. Come to find out, a graduate student had actually taken those home for reasons that nobody really understands. And that graduate student had since left the institution. So there were 35 consent forms that were signed that we just don't know where they are right now. And it's not something that this investigator would ever have found acceptable. It just happened because that communication that really wasn't there as constant. There weren't those check-ins to make sure that people knew, okay, no, this is really important. This is why we're doing what we're doing, kind of thing. So that's going to be my show on that. So we are in a pandemic, unfortunately. And the very nature of human subjects research is very different now than it was just 7 months ago. For a while, after when we first kind of did our stay at home, we did shut down human subjects research, and there were no in-person procedures. Everything was required to be done virtually. We have since opened up in-person procedures. It is, I believe, it is on a more limited basis, meaning that I think I don't know what the exact percentage is, if it's 50% or 75%, but it is kind of on a lower scale. The percent of research activity that is allowed. We still want to stress that anything that can be virtual needs to be virtual. If you can do assessments virtually, if you can do interviews virtually, that type of thing, please continue to do that. We do allow in-person procedures for those type of activities that cannot be done in an online format. If you're doing EEGs, if you're doing MRI scans, if you're doing some sort of measure that really does need to be in person, you're working with 3-year-old children with certain parameters, and you need to have that face-to-face contact with them. These are the types of studies that we can have going on right now. There are a lot of things that we need to put in place just to protect human participants, and also protect the lab individuals who are actually running these tests. The IRB has kind of divided studies into risk levels, and the requirements really depend on the level of risk. So virtual, no risk at all. You have level 1 where you can do in person, but you can social distance throughout. You're in a big enough space, and you can have that social distancing. You'll have to wear facial coverings, of course, and at all times, and that type of thing. Of course, there's going to be disinfecting of everything that individual has come in contact with and touched once they leave. And then, you need to schedule the participant sessions so that you have that time to disinfect. And then the next level up are those procedures that you cannot socially distance throughout. So that's going to be like the MRIs. So there is going to be a particular point in time where you do need to actually have some sort of contact, and even if it's contact with the head and the face area. So they're going to have a little bit more. We're going to require that you have those medical grade face masks as well. Depending on what you're doing, additional PPE might be needed and required for that. So we'd kind of look at these on an individual basis and see what they're doing. For those investigators that already have studies that have been approved before the pandemic came, or kind of during the summer, what we're doing now is looking at them individually so that an application does need to be submitted. It's a modification through Cayuse to what we say resume in-person procedures. So the IRB kind of looks at that, and then once you have your approval, you can go on and go forth. For new studies, we have it built into the application, asking these questions about, can you social distance? If you can't, what are you going to do? How are you disinfecting? All of these things. So we have these built into the application. And once we send out that approval letter, you'll want to take a really careful look at that language. On some of them, we do have language that says that you were in a pandemic and you cannot proceed with in-person procedures until this is lifted. And there's other language on other ones where people can go forth. We're going to be very, very clear and transparent about the studies that are approved. And I think going forward, we're going to, if it's approved, then you're approved for in-person. You do not have to do that extra modification. That extra modification is just for those ones that were approved prior to the pandemic. So there are 2 requirements for doing those in-person procedures. One was that IRB approval, and that's just the safety protocols in place. And the second one is enrollment in the proactive testing program. So the Office of Research is doing investigator COVID-19 tests just for those investigators that are going to be coming in contact with participants. Right now it is a weekly, but as we kind of move forward and as we have additional studies taking place, we are going to look at increasing the frequency of those testings so that we can offer that and really best protect human subjects. That's really all of the content that I had today. And here is all of our contact information. Mary Beth, Yesenia, me. And also, if you don't really know who to send your question to, IRB@utdallas.edu is a catch-all, and all of us do monitor that, and somebody will get back to you as quickly as we can.
Amanda, thank you for sharing your time and valuable information with the new faculty during today's session. Registration and so much more can be found at research.utdallas.edu. Thank you.